نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. The love and reverence that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum had for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was so immense that it would not allow them to fall behind on any instruction. In fact, they were looking for the instructions of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when they were exposed to any, when they were told of any, they would go rushing to fulfill it. Once, Abdullah ibn Rawaha radiallahu anhu was walking towards the masjid. In the meantime, people had started accumulating, and the Prophet ﷺ was asking people to settle down and to take a seat. Now, Abdullah ibn Rawaha radiallahu anhu wasn't yet in the masjid, but he heard Nabi ﷺ's voice from outside. He was still in the street. So, as soon as he heard the Prophet ﷺ's instruction that please everyone take a seat, he sat down where he was. And he stayed sitting there. Someone came into the masjid and said, "O Prophet of Allah, when you asked everyone to sit down, Abdullah, who is still outside, he hasn't entered the masjid yet, but he heard your voice. He also sat down. And he's sitting there out in the street." So the Prophet ﷺ had him called. And he made a lot of dua for him, that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase your zeal to obey Allah and to obey His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Similarly, on another occasion, when the Prophet ﷺ was about to give khutbah, he asked people to have a seat, to settle down. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu was just entering the masjid. He was at the doorstep of the masjid. He heard the Prophet ﷺ's voice to sit. He sat down right there. The Prophet ﷺ looked at him and he smiled and he said, "It's okay, you can come inside and sit." They did not want to delay even for a second. When they heard an instruction, to them, every instruction of the Prophet ﷺ was more valuable than anything else in the whole world. Everything about the Prophet ﷺ was more precious to them than anything in the whole world. When you have that kind of love for someone, you can't see yourself disobeying them. When you have that kind of devotion to someone, you can't imagine a life in which you're disobeying that person. You would rather leave this world than be disobedient to that person. That's how much love the Sahaba had for their Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Similarly, when we will bring in our hearts true love for the Prophet of Allah, then we will find that every instruction of his, in fact, even the things that he hasn't instructed us to do, but he did himself, we'll find them irresistible. We'll feel compelled to do it just because the Prophet ﷺ did it. One Sahabi came and he saw that the Prophet ﷺ used to keep his top button undone. So that's it. Nabi ﷺ never told him anything about it. But for the rest of his life, he never did up his top button. He said, "No, I saw Nabi ﷺ in that condition, so I would like to stay in that same condition." Sahaba saw the Prophet ﷺ dressing in a certain way. They said, that's how I want to dress. That's it. That's good enough for me. So the easiest way to get to the obedience of Allah and the obedience of His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is to bring the love of Allah and the love of His Rasul into our hearts. Sometimes it's not that we don't want to obey. Sometimes we don't find the motivation. We don't find that push. But when the love is there, you don't need a push. You don't need that encouragement. Love has to be there. And our deen is based on love. It's based on love for Allah, love for His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and love for the entire mankind. This is in the foundations of our deen. That's what enables us to reach a higher standard of akhlaq, higher standard of manners and dealings with each other. But when the heart is empty of love, the love isn't there, then it's a very cold relationship. Then it will take a great deal of effort, and it'll be very difficult to obey and to listen to an instruction. So let's turn our attention and focus on building love for Allah and love for His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam in our hearts. And we'll talk about some of the means, some of the things that will help us. And inshallah, at the end of it, if we start practicing on those things, we'll find the conditions of our hearts changing. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad.